Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being here with me. Breeze. I see your notice, and this is the second day in a row that you're saying no video, and I am looking at Facebook, I'm looking at YouTube, and there is clear video on there. Please go ahead and reboot your machine and see if you're having some issues there, maybe a graphics card, see if you can see some video elsewhere. Anyway, folks, we are going to have a great show for you today. The first thing that I'm asking you to do is please go ahead and share our program. That is how we are going to be able to send the messages out. I want to read something that I sent out today in my newsletter. I know all of you don't necessarily get the newsletter. If you want my newsletter, always go to politicsdoneright.com. Yes, we're going to have a great show, Bruce. We're going to have a great show. Just go to politicsdoneright.com and or egbertowillies.com and sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get it. But what I want to do is I want to read a piece of my newsletter here that I sent out to everybody because I am actually feeling very, very good. No fear, no, absolutely no nothing. Anyhow, that what I said in the newsletter that I sent out was as follows. 2 months to our landslide win. 2 months to our landslide win. I think we learned the wrong lesson from 2016. The mainstream media wants us to believe it is a rat race for the purpose of ratings. They will keep your anxiety level high. I also believe pollsters, questions, models lead to results that force our campaigns to make the wrong choices. We are campaigning with irrational fear. It is true that Trump has a fanatic base that lives in an alternate state of reality. By no means is it a majority. Trump will get most of them to vote because he promotes a winning attitude, even with his quantifiable failures. He sells his failures as ours, which is accepted by the ill-informed. In my humble opinion, we must speak to our landslide win that is guaranteed by number one, campaigning with the surety of winning more assertively than Trump. We have reason to. Opening the door to those who are on the fence but are scared to jump. And that's where my book comes in, where I tell you how to speak to the other side. You're not going to get 100% of them, but guess what, folks? You're going to get enough of them. And lastly, again, opening the door to those who are on the fence but are scared to jump. They want to know that there will be somebody there to catch them. They want to know that they're not going out on a limb and going to be alone. They want to know that. They want to be able to say, I know what I need to do, but I'm so comfortable here. How can I do the right thing and not feel ostracized? How can I do the right thing and not feel alone? You have to be there for them. You have to let them know that they have alternatives to make life, even as they make lives better for not only themselves, but their families as well. That is what we have to do. And that is a guarantee of our landslide because the things are in our favor. Our argument is believable and when delivered appropriately is amazingly edible by most. Admittedly, it is hard not to fear misstepping given the tyrant that is in the White House. I have faith in Americans. I really do have faith in Americans. We are self-correcting people. We have done it before, not out of fear, but resolve. I am using all of my media assets and time to promote not a false positivity, but action-based empowerment to win. But folks, please remember that you need to support Politics Done Right on other venues like this so that we can get that job done. But anyhow, what is our program going to be about today? Our program today is titled, Biden Eviscerates Trump. Stephanie Ruhle on Unemployment Report. And we have a great interview with Mauro Guillen on 2030. Anyhow, Biden places Trump on the defensive for the demeaning of soldiers. We deconstruct the unemployment report. Mauro Guillen talks 2030. He is the author of 2030, How Today's Biggest Trends will collide and reshape the future of everything. Stephanie Ruhle interprets the unemployment report beyond the numbers. Biden eviscerates Trump on his mean, insensitive remarks on soldiers. I imagine by now all those glory, glory, hallelujah, I love my liberty Trump supporters are going to feel the need to say, if Trump can speak that way of those people who protect us, those people who give him the wherewithal so that he can make the billions that he really doesn't have, so that he can be in a free country, and he thinks that they are suckers. He thinks they are losers. But you know, this isn't new. He says it all the time. He goes on TV and says the reason why McCain was no hero is because he got shot down and got caught. He said it before. Nobody wanted to believe that that's what he really meant, and he continues to say it. Why should we not believe it now? Why should we not believe it now? Daniel Ledo, if you think that is slander, that is almost saying that you don't believe the words coming out of Trump's mouth when he does the interviews on the channels and he says, McCain, who flew for this country, who bombed for this country. I'm a pacifist, but not a pacifist, but a good guy. McCain, who goes ahead and flies a plane. He flies a plane and he gets caught. When it is time for McCain to come back home, McCain says, I am not going to come home because you want to do a favor to my daddy who is a general. I am going to stay here with my men. And Trump would have said, hey, yeah, I'm going home. McCain says, no, I am not going home. I'm staying in Vietnam. I am going to stay until all of us are released. And then they are all released. Think about that. And then Donald Trump goes and he says, he's not a hero. He's no hero because he got caught. It's no different than what he is saying right now than what they said he said. So let's be real, folks. How to talk to your right-wing neighbors. Folks, you're going to have all your material together. So go, please consider getting my book. I have the link out there. It's called It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. You can get it at Amazon. Just look up my name, Egberto Willies, or just put the name It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Neighbors, Friends. Anyhow, folks, so we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to have at the end, sociologist, economist, Wharton professor Mauro Guillen discusses what we will look like in 2030. I mean, it was a great interview. I mean, I think you guys are going to love that interview. Mauro is a very likable guy, very, very cool guy. But anyhow, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and get started with Biden, who, I mean, today he really gave it to Trump. I want you to listen to it, and then we'll take it on the other side.
If what is written in the Atlantic is true, it's disgusting. And it affirms what most of us believe to be true. That Donald Trump is not fit to be the job of president, to be the commander-in-chief. The president reportedly said, and I emphasize reportedly said, that those who sign up to serve instead of doing something more lucrative are suckers. Let me be real clear. When my son was an assistant U.S. attorney and he volunteered to go to Kosovo while the war was going on as a civilian, he wasn't a sucker. When my son volunteered and joined the United States military as the Attorney General and went to Iraq for a year, won the Bronze Star and other commendations, he wasn't a sucker. The servicemen and women he served with, particularly those who did not come home, were not losers. If these statements are true, the president should humbly apologize to every Gold Star mother and father and every Blue Star family that he's denigrated and insulted. Who the heck does he think he is? Is it true? Well, we've heard from his own mouth his characterizations of an American hero, John McCain, as a loser in 2015. Donald Trump said he was not a war hero. I like people who weren't captured. Well, good for him. And his dismissal of the traumatic brain injury suffered by troops serving in Iraq as mere headaches not too long ago. He stood by, failing to take action or even raise the issue with Vladimir Putin, while the Kremlin puts bounties on the heads of American troops in Afghanistan. It's a sacred duty. And you're tired of hearing me say this. Those you've been covering me for years know. I get in trouble for saying it, but I'm going to say it again. We have many obligations as a government. We only have one truly sacred obligation. Equip and support those who we send into harm's way, care for their families while they're gone, and care for them when they are home. That's the only truly sacred obligation a government has. Duty, honor, country. These are values that drive our service members. It's an all-voluntary outfit. President Trump has demonstrated he has no sense of service, no loyalty to any cause other than himself. And if I have the honor of being the next commander-in-chief, I will ensure that our American heroes know I'll have their backs, honor their sacrifice, and those who've been injured will be in military parades. I'm always cautioned not to lose my temper. This may be as close as I've come this campaign. It's just a marker of how deeply President Trump and I disagree about the role of the President of the United States of America.
Now, folks, for my good conservative brothers and sisters here that are saying, "Oh no, he didn't say that. The president didn't say that." Let me ask you again. Let's just look at the evidence. We have people who were there who said that he said that. Okay, yes, that is hearsay. Just like Donald, that is hearsay. I'll give you that. But you have heard him say it out of his own mouth before several times. He said McCain was not a hero. He was a loser. Why? Because he got caught. And that is what he said. I mean, come on, he said it before, so it's not anything new, guys. Now, you don't have to want to believe it. You can continue to be self-delusional. That is fine. But all we need, folks, for our landslide is let's get 60% of the vote, okay? Because we will bring those people who are tied to Donald Trump until they will be with him until we jail Donald Trump when he leaves the White House, until they see the evidence that Donald Trump has always been a crook. And we will be able to show all the evidence of a crooked Donald Trump. I mean, and guess what? Those of you that are following Donald Trump right now, I still love you. And when you see the light, I won't be rubbing it into you. I'll be just telling you, join the fold. I promise you that. I'm not going to be holding it against you because I know how good propaganda is. So after you are able to see factually that Donald Trump is a tyrant, I will still be there for you. And for all the lefties that are going to want your neck, I'll be telling them absolutely not. You also are our brothers and sisters. Okay, the next one that I want to show is how Biden handled QAnon. They asked him a QAnon question, and he tied it into Obamacare. I love it. I love it. I love it. Check this out because this is great. Check this out.
What would you say to the supporters of the QAnon, the people who believe in that conspiracy, what they think is true about America? That there's sex trafficking and a conspiracy against President Trump. And what would you say to President Trump for not rejecting that conspiracy and the people who believe in it?
I've been a big supporter of mental health. I'd recommend that people who believe it maybe should take advantage while it still exists in the Affordable Care Act. It's bizarre, totally bizarre. And now, have you guys found that plane load of people in uniforms and weapons and flying around? I mean, have you found them yet? Is anybody even from, and by the way, I respect conservative and liberal points of view in the press. Anybody found that plane? What in God's name are we doing? Look at how it makes us look around the world. It's mortifying. It's embarrassing, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous. If the president doesn't know better, which he has to know better, then my Lord, we're in much more trouble than I ever thought we were. It's bizarre. The words of a president matter. Even a lousy president. It gives succor, it gives encouragement to people who are spouting irrational views that no one has even close to ever presuming or showing ever existed. And it's done for a simple reason. From the very beginning, he's understood the only way he could win the first time and can win this time is he fundamentally divides the nation. Puts the nation, divides us all at each other's throats. That's not who we are. That's not who we are.
I see that, Brother Rudnin. Absolutely. So, okay, look, my brother Tank 28. Let me tell you, Brother Tank 28. He's talking about QAnon. I know you don't believe in the QAnon fantasy as well, but anyhow, like I said, I still love all you guys. All right. When all of this stuff comes to pass, remember you have you right, guys. You have a good lefty friend here. That when we meet, I'll share some coffee with you, and when COVID is over, I'll give you a hug. We cool. We're cool. Anyhow, folks, last thing. You know, the unemployment report came out today, and Donald Trump does not understand percentages. Oh, we grew by a whole lot percentage, but if you're growing if you tanked a whole bunch and then you grew, you got back 20% of it, it sounds like, oh, wow, that's a 20% rise. Well, a 20% rise of a little sounds good, right? So let's be clear. We are still in the dumpster and we need a lot more. And the problem is what we are getting back now, the employment that we're getting back now, is the easy pickings, the ones that you can get back right away. But there is now a fundamental issue in our economic system that we are going to have to talk about. It's not for this show today, but the person that touched on it was Stephanie Ruhle. Listen to what she had to say.
It's definitely good news. It's not great news. So we still have over half of the people who lost their jobs during the pandemic. They're not back to work. So we're not booming, and we're certainly not in a V-shaped recovery. What it is fragile and fragmented. However, it's that fragmentation that is creating these two very different narratives. So for those who are the have-nots, they're really suffering. They're not back to work. They don't have child care. They don't have health care. It's unclear what their kids' school situation is going to be. And we're seeing more and more businesses take temporary layoffs and make them permanent. We know a lot of big businesses are considering furloughing workers in the months ahead. Now, for the haves, people who are invested in the stock market, not the economy, things are going really well. And for people who do have jobs, who are working from home, a lot of them have saved money. They don't have commuting costs. They're not picking up coffee or lunch every day. So it's a real divide. And when the president continues to say to people, well, you're going to lose all this if I'm not in office, he's obviously not correct. But that narrative is working because look how he's doing in the polls. Despite all of the pain in the economy, the president still does well on the economy with voters.
Okay, so you can see that she explains that, we have systemic problems in the economy. Now, we aren't going to talk about the economy today. I have an entire show where we'll talk about the issues with the economy, but I'm going to just leave it here a bit. Here are some issues that we're going to talk about, and other people can bring their thing when we talk about it. Numero uno. With a lot of people working from home right now, a lot of offices are going to be remaining empty, and more than likely that real estate value is going to drop because people like Slack, and all these other folks say we are not going back to the offices, which means they're going to release those offices. We're going to have a volume of real estate on the market now. It's going to cause that to go down. That's numero uno. Numero dos, all those restaurants and places that were dependent on those people who went to work every day, they no longer have that business. That's going going to reduce the cash flow in that area, which means that's going to further depress it. Those people who had those restaurants used to buy products from all these other places and had a higher inflated value on that product. In other words, if you cook your own rice and peas at home, you pay the grocery cost and whatever electricity it is to do to make that, that's a certain amount of stuff. However, if you go ahead and have added value onto it, meaning you go to a restaurant, you have a server who serves you. You have an added value to that rice, that added value to those peas and the meat. All of that increases in values, which means there's more money circulating. All of that is gone. So we have a depressive effect that is lagging because of the restructuring of our economy. These are a lot of things that are not baked into what you're saying. So the employment rise that you see now is the easy get, right? The restaurants that are that's going to hire about 20% more of their people back, but not the rest. Now the factories are going to there's some gains, of course. Delivery people, that's going to increase, but the delta is depressive. We'll talk about that in other shows, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, Amazon is going to lease that empty space, but given that when you're storing product for delivery, think about this: you don't have to have amenities for human beings. So instinctively, you'll see that the storage locations for these products require a lot less space per person than it would, let's say, if you had a restaurant or a retail store where you have to have room for people to walk, etc. In a place where you're just storing product for resale or to sell, where robots are moving things around, you don't need human space, and it's a lot less altogether. Anyhow, it is time for us since this is a pretty long interview, I want to ask you guys to please consider becoming patrons. Go ahead and click on the link that I just gave you, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, to subscribe to our program. We do need subscriptions to keep us alive, so please go to politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. You can also support us at politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. And please go to our store, get our cups, get our books, politicsdoneright.com/ and you know how you do that. You can get our book, our new book. It's worth it. You can get our other book, which is Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. And of course, our cup and t-shirts, all of that you can get at our store. And if you want to get our book at Amazon, here is the link for our book at Amazon. Okay, let's go ahead and talk to El Señor Mauro. Mauro is a good guy. Mauro is a professor at the Wharton School at UPenn. By the way, isn't that where Donald Trump went? Yeah, but this guy actually did his own. He did his own test to get into the school. He did his own test to become an MBA. He did his own test to do all these things. He's a smart guy. Let's go ahead and listen to Mauro Guillen. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. I'm here with Mauro F. Guillen. Well, I have to re-cue that because I started that in the wrong screen size. So bear with me as I fix that. Okay, I think I got it fixed. So we're back now to El Señor Mauro Guillen. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. I'm here with Mauro F. Guillen. He's a Spanish-American sociologist, political economist, management educator, Zanman professor at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, and director of Penn Lauder Center for International Business Education and Research. He was the Anthony L. Davis Director of the Joseph H. Lauder Institute of Management at International Studies from 2007 to 2019. Guillen graduated in 1987 from the University of Oviedo in his native Spain with a BA degree in political economy and business management. He came to the United States in 1987 to pursue a PhD in sociology sponsored by the Bank of Spain and the Fulbright program. He graduated from Yale Ivy League University in 1992. Professor Guillen is the author of the new book that everyone must get, 2030, How Today's Biggest Trends Will Collide and Reshape the Future of Everything. Professor Guillen, welcome to Politics Done Right.
Thank you so much, Egberto, for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, look, when I got your info, I said, this is right in line with a lot of what we cover here on Politics Done Right, and I really wanted to pick your brain because you are one of those forward thinkers, something that is dearly missing not only here in the United States but throughout the world. I want to start with first with an article that I read. Somebody that wrote about your book, and I want to read the first paragraph. It says, some crises are clear turning points in history. Disruptions like the Black Death of the 1300s or the Great Depression of the 1930s, where everything before is swept aside and a new order emerges. But coronavirus pandemic, that is not one of those times, argues Wharton professor Mauro Guillen, author of the book we just mentioned, 2030, How Today's Biggest Trends Will Collide and Reshape the Future of Everything. Please explain that to me, because let me tell you, that is sort of anathema to me, right? When I saw the pandemic, I really said history would have changed, and whereas you don't think it's as bad as the Depression or would be as change driven as the Depression, please give me the reason why you don't think it would be that absolute.
So, Egberto, you're absolutely correct in that some of your listeners may be wondering, how is this different from what happened 100 years ago with the influenza pandemic or the Great Depression and so on and so forth? And the key difference is that this time around, what we're seeing is, for the most part, an acceleration of pre-existing trends, okay? So e-commerce wasn't something that we invented in the last 5 months, but the pandemic has accelerated that, okay? Remote work, that's something also that we were already experimenting with, but the pandemic made it go through the roof, okay, in terms of how many workers here in the United States are now working from home, and I guess you and I are among them. Mm-hmm. And then the other big thing is that it also accelerates some longer term trends, like think about population aging, right? Very soon we're gonna have more grandparents than grandchildren. That makes a big difference. Well, the pandemic is also going to accelerate that, because when people lose their jobs or when they see that there's a lot of uncertainty, they postpone having babies. And as they postpone having babies, and perhaps in some cases they never have them, then the population also grows older much faster. So acceleration of trends. So in other words, the future is going to arrive much sooner as a result of this pandemic. That's the whole point.
Now, so let me give some context to that. What would you say? Let's take the Great Depression as, I don't want to use the flu, the past flu as an example, but I want to use the Depression as an example. The Depression showed us that we needed to have a whole lot of social structures, socioeconomic structures to mitigate what, let's say, how capitalism functions. Now, when it comes to what the pandemic shows, I think here in America, not necessarily in the European countries, because they're much better prepared with a good socioeconomic state, how would you say it would change America proper? Wouldn't it be much bigger, let's say, in what we see as a dependence on government than what occurred in let's say, the 1930s?
Yeah, so that's a wonderful question to ask. And you're putting your finger on what I think might be a parallel between what happened in the 1930s and what happens this time around, in the sense that we're going to see the government playing a bigger role. Today, as you know, in the papers everywhere, we see this headline that for the first time, debt in the United States, the national debt, has exceeded the size of the economy, gross domestic product, right?
Amazing, yes.
So that's a milestone, that's important. But let me give you another specific example. The pandemic will lead to more automation. And we know that because, to maintain social distancing, companies are putting in machines, or they're putting in automatic checkout registers at stores and so on and so forth to avoid contact. Okay, as a result of that, then maybe we will have more technological unemployment. So what's the solution to that? Well, the solution to that is perhaps a universal basic income. So I'm not necessarily advocating for it. In fact, I have some misgivings about a universal basic income. But unlike before the pandemic, now the discussion, the debate about a universal basic income paid by the government to every citizen is now part of the mainstream. It's no longer something that only radical people would propose. So you're absolutely correct. There are some parallels. I think in the 1930s, the government in the United States, in Europe, came to play a more important role. And I think something very similar is going to happen again in the wake of this pandemic.
There was a reason why you're here. That is such a very important answer that you just gave there, because I think you've shared something that I think many don't see immediately. During the last 40 years, we've had a huge increase in productivity, and that has not paralleled an increase in wages to take advantage of that productivity. Now you're talking about automation, further automation, trucks driving themselves, factories even more automated. That means even a much greater increase in productivity, which means if it doesn't go to the people, again, it yet plays into the income disparity, wealth disparity in the country. I think you're acknowledging, or you're stating that in effect, society is going to have to change. Now, how in the type of mentality, in a capitalist mentality that permeates the United States more so than Europe or any other country in the world, how are we going to make it possible to change the psyche, not only of the pure capitalists in this country, but let's say of the people in the country who have come to believe that only this model works?
Well, I think, let me make three very quick points about this. And again, I think this is a very important question that I think all of us should be asking ourselves right now. So number one, we were in a crisis here in this country 12 years ago, and the crisis originated from the financial sector, if you remember. And without the swift intervention of both the government and the Federal Reserve, we wouldn't have been able to weather that crisis. How do we know that? Well, look, in Europe, the crisis, if you remember, lasted longer and was deeper. And the reason was that the governments in Europe and the central bank didn't intervene as strongly, as swiftly, okay? So that's the first point. The second point I think that is really important is, of course, everything is subject to politics, right? And we have two camps here in the United States. One of them, most of the time, but not always, is in favor of reducing the size of the government. And the other is most of the time more in favor of having the government play a key role. So I think, thinking in terms of the election that is coming up, this has not yet been put in such stark terms as I'm doing it now. But I think implicit in some of the proposals by the two candidates, we're seeing that there is a political debate going on as to what is the proper role of the government, right, of the state, of the federal state, of the federal government in the United States when it comes to coping with this crisis, right? And then the third point that I would like to mention, going back to the extremely important remark that you made about inequality, this crisis is accelerating inequality, okay? So people with less education, they cannot work remotely. They have to go to work. If they go to work, they have to use public transportation. So they're more exposed to the virus. And we also know that minorities such as African Americans and Hispanics, they're also being more affected by the crisis. So inequality is growing. We're going to have to deal with this because otherwise it's going to destroy the social and the political fabric of this country. We cannot tolerate even higher levels of inequality of what we currently have, because as you know, they're already at historical highs, like, paralleling what, was going on 120 years ago during the so-called Gilded Age, right. When, the Carnegies and the Mellons and the Rockefellers were the business giants of the time, right? So I think that, especially from a political point of view, but also from an economic point of view, and that's why I always end all of these, answers with, what is the business case, right, for a different path here? We are in a consumer-oriented economy. So right now, the only thing preventing us from falling off the cliff is the government. As you know, people are suffering. And we need to use the government resources in a wise way. I'm not saying on a permanent basis, but certainly to take us out of the immediate problem that we find ourselves in.
I have sort of a double question here. First of all, we talk about having a debate in two different forms here. Let me ask a question, and I don't know if you want to answer it or not, but I hope you do. I don't see a debate in the country, really, right? First of all, I don't think we have the intellectual input on the side of the presidents, and it's not even only the president. It's a president has an unintellectual team, a team that's not based on numbers. That's how I see it. That's how many people see it. You can't have a debate if you don't have with what to debate. Is that what people in your domain see at all? I mean, you're at one of the premier business schools in the country. I don't
Absolutely.
see how Donald Trump is taken seriously where he went.
Absolutely. Look, Alberto, I think there were two key messages coming out of the Republican convention last week. The first is that there's no platform. They didn't pass a platform, as you know. And a platform is essentially a set of goals that the candidate would like to pursue if reelected, in this case, to office, and a series of policies that will help the country move towards those goals. That's absent. That's the first point. And then I think very importantly as well, the second message that came out of that convention, the Republican convention, was that this is all about Donald Trump, and it's all about whether he can be reelected. And as you know, for presidents, it's very important, in terms of their historical legacy, to be reelected, because that's kind of a validation of what they accomplished during the first term. Now, obviously, the pandemic has changed every conceivable calculation, right? I mean, Trump did have certain accomplishments, let's say, as of the month of February, that he could use, right? I'm not saying that I would agree with it, but that he could use to make the case for a second term. And the pandemic, and I think also the racial injustice issue that has become so prominent right now, for a good reason, has also essentially redrawn the whole situation. So you're right. At some level, there's no debate, because one side here in this campaign is refusing to have a debate about ideas, about what kind of a society, what kind of an economy we want to have. I'm completely with you on that. I think from that point of view, we really don't have a debate, and we should have a debate. So let me amend what I said earlier by saying that the situation right now calls for a debate. We should be having a debate about the role of the government, about what we want to do with this country, and how we want to get there.
Now, you're a professor at a business school. You're an MBA as well, among other things. You're an economist. Now, one of the things that I've always argued with economists, with Western economists about basically is a statement that I heard you make as well, which is what you always think whenever you ask questions, you always think about business. Elaborate on that for me, because I have a different take on that, and I'd like to. I am so impressed with just the table of contents of 2030. I really am. I am fascinated by somebody who put up all those subjects together in that form in one book. So I want to ask, why did you say whenever you're looking at problems, you always think business?
There are several ways of making the case, right, that we need to move forward in a way that is different from what has been done in the recent past in this country. So you can make a political case, and I think the political case, the main argument there should be the levels of inequality that we have in this society right now are not good. They're not good for many reasons, okay? So that, I think, is the political case to be made. But there's always also a business case that one can make. And I think what makes an argument particularly powerful is if you can end up in the same place, meaning recommending the same kinds of actions, whether you make the political case or you make the business case. So I think the two are most of the time things that can reinforce each other. And that to the extent that they reinforce each other, then we can move forward more quickly, right? So I don't see them as being incompatible with one another. Although I should say there are some politicians who try to pass legislation or executive actions that benefit business, but don't benefit the common people. And we're seeing that, by the way, with the enormous bifurcation that we see right now between Wall Street and Main Street. So the stock market is doing really great, but obviously people are suffering. We have high unemployment, and we have people who are going hungry, which is in this country, in the United States, it's just astonishing to realize that we have children going hungry. So for me, as a business school professor, but also somebody as a sociologist who cares about society, I think the best is when we can coordinate the political case and the business case, right? That's when things actually happen. And that's when I think we can, implement change that helps a majority of the population.
I think that is actually a great clarification, because I mean, you weren't put in business first, you're put in business in parallel, which is something, my tenet is that we think about what the system that we want. We think about how we want humans to live, and then we create a business model around that. Is that congruous with your idea?
Absolutely, absolutely. And let me take the argument one step further, which is when people hear the word business, they think about large companies. They think about, well, right now about big tech, right? Mm-hmm. Which of course they're doing extremely well.
Right.
But there's a lot of ordinary people in the United States who are business people.
Right.
Have small businesses. And as you know, they have been devastated by this pandemic, especially among minority communities. So I think the business case at the end of the day should be something that benefits, obviously, not just the large corporations, but also all of those, in many cases, mom and pop, so-called mom and pop stores or shops. They are really the foundation of the economy. And they exist in the service sector, in the manufacturing sector, and also in agriculture. And that's what we need to nurture, right? So that's, I think, a very, very important reminder, which is that think about business as including all of these people who are engaged in business. And of course, they're employees, right? And at the end of the day, we're all employees, or most of us are employees of some kind of a business, sometimes large, sometimes small. But our own welfare as employees and as consumers accordingly depends on those businesses doing well.
Excellent. Okay. That's a kind of answer I think we should hear from a lot more MBAs when we're watching CNBC or MSNBC. It's the answer we never get. So, thank you for that. Now, Professor Guillen, what I want to do real quickly, though, because we're running on time, but I think, I like I told you about the table of contents, what I want to do is go through that table of contents real quickly for you to kind of give a synopsis of each of these, because I think they're going to, just that alone is going to be enlightening. The name of the book is 2030, How Today's Biggest Trends Will Collide and Reshape the Future of Everything. So why do we need to follow the babies?
So follow the babies means if you want to figure out what the future is going to look like, think about the babies who are being born today. You see, a third of the consumers that the world is going to have by the year 2030 have already been born. So if you understand those babies, how well educated they may be, what kinds of jobs they may have, and so on and so forth, then that provides you with a window into the future. That's why I call that chapter Follow the Babies.
A lead-in indicator.
Exactly.
All right. Gray is the new black. I thought there was something else. What are you talking about?
So gray is the population above the age of 60. And Egberto, something really important is about to happen. I mentioned earlier, we're going to have more grandparents than grandchildren. For the first time in the US, also in Europe and in Japan and in China, the largest consumer group is going to be the population above age 60.
Wow.
And this is going to change everything. You see, there are many brands, for instance, that won't have certain kinds of products in their stores because they don't want people above the age of 60 to show up. They think that would be bad for their brand image.
Right.
All of that is going to have to change because gray is the new black, is the new fast-growing segment of the market. And remember, Egberto, this is good news. We're living longer and longer and longer. So this change is here with us to stay.
And you know what? I know what this one is, but I want to see how you're going to say this. Keeping up with the Sings and the Wangs.
So this is all about the middle class.
Yes.
Unfortunately, in Europe, here in the United States, the middle class is stagnant. For the last 100 years, all of us in the middle class have been trying to keep up with the Joneses. Right? That was the old saying.
Yes.
Well, from now on, the name of the game is let's keep up with the Chinese and the Indian middle classes.
Yes.
They're going to become the largest markets. And you see, there's something really important about which country in the world has the largest consumer market, which is that the largest consumer market sets the rules of the game, right? regulation, marketing, all of those things revolve around the largest market in the world. And within about 10 years or so, the Chinese consumer market will be the largest. And then 20 or 25 years after that, the Indian consumer market
Yes.
will become the largest. So we're going to have to learn how to live in that type of world.
And there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely nothing. It's just different, right?
It's just different.
Yes.
But we need to change our mindset, because I think here in the United States, although both of us are immigrants, I think we have now learned to internalize that mindset.
Of course.
Is the mindset of the US being number one.
Right.
Well, when it comes to consumption, we're not going to be number one after the year 2030. And that is something that we need to adjust to.
And some people are having a hard time adjusting to it. Second sex, no more.
Question mark, right?
Yes.
So this is the idea that women, as we all know, are making a lot of progress with their careers. More than half of college graduates in the US now are women. Now, this is not to say that every woman in the United States or in the world is doing better. But we're seeing, for example, something really important, which is that a little bit before 2030, more than half of the wealth in the world will be owned by women.
That's great.
And Egberto, let me tell you, women are different than us.
Yes.
They make decisions in a different way. They are more risk averse on average. So if they have more money, I think that's going to change consumer markets. It's going to change financial markets.
Interestingly, also with this pandemic, the countries led by women are doing much better than the countries led by men.
Absolutely. And New Zealand is almost always proposed as the best example of that.
Yes, yes, she is very good. And young. She's young and she's good. Cities drown first.
So this is all about how we have misunderstood the potential problems that big cities have. You see, cities occupy 1% of the land in the world. They're home to about 55% of the population, and it's growing very quickly.
Right.
But they account for 80% of the carbon emissions. So even before this pandemic, cities were problematic because they tend to abuse the environment.
Right.
You see? And we need to rethink cities. We need to work towards a new urban environment, especially if we want to bring to an end the problem of climate change.
More cell phones than toilets?
So this is mostly about South Asia and Africa, you see, talking about priorities. People prefer to be connected 24/7 with a cell phone or with a mobile phone than to have a home, right, in which there's a connection to the sewer, and
right.
Therefore you can have a toilet. I think this speaks volumes, this chapter, about how interconnectivity has become the single most important thing that people want to have in life, with all of the positive and negative consequences, of course.
Now, this is interesting because we've talked about the rent economy and a whole lot of other things before. You're talking about imagine no possessions.
Right. So that's a verse in John Lennon's famous song, Imagine.
Yes.
And the idea here is that I actually believe, I'm a true believer in that the sharing economy may help us overcome the environmental crisis. And let me give you an example. According to the US Department of Agriculture, we waste a third of the food here in the United States. We let it go bad in our refrigerators. We never use it. If we had a sharing platform that worked for everyone for food, we would, first of all, reduce carbon emissions, because the agricultural sector is the biggest part of the economy in terms of carbon emissions. But secondly, we would be able to feed every American. Remember, there's a lot of children who go hungry to school, or these days they stay at home and they go hungry. This is unacceptable. So I think we should be sharing more, and that would include food, clothing, many other things.
Now, more currencies than countries. Now, that one is a sort of a, I don't know, tell me.
So when people hear those words, more currencies than countries, they immediately think about Bitcoin.
Right.
And you see, I advance the argument in the book that I don't think we're going to see Bitcoin become a leading currency in the world, because governments don't like it. They see it as a competitor. So I think we need to broaden the concept of cryptocurrency. If cryptocurrencies or digital tokens are just a substitute for money, I don't think they're going to be tolerated by governments. But we could add other things to digital tokens, like incentives, for example, to be more environmentally conscious. Or we could track with them the provenance of the goods that we purchase. Or we could vote with them. So I think the future is digital tokens rather than cryptocurrencies themselves, with those tokens actually including a cryptocurrency.
Professor Guillen, you are in fact a thinker. Not only that, but you also think outside of the box. I have been very impressed. There are not very many MBAs that impress me at all. I've been very impressed with you, Professor. Thank you so kindly for having been with Politics Done Right. But before I close, I want to ask you to tell us something that you wished I had asked you that you want to get out there in the ethos.
I think perhaps the question that I always like to answer, Egberto, and that you've asked me like really important questions is, what am I supposed to do? Okay, so all of these things are changing. Okay, the year 2030 will be very different from what we experience as life today. And my advice to that, which is in the last few pages in the book, is, look, in the midst of all of this change, never make a decision that is irreversible. Okay? So don't succumb to the extremes of not doing anything or changing everything all at once. Okay, you have to find a happy medium. And that happy medium should be guided by the principle that you should never, never, ever close the doors behind you. You should always make sure that whatever decision you make, you can reverse it. Because in the midst of so much change, maybe the assumptions that you made while you were making that decision will be correct today, but wrong tomorrow.
The name of the book, 2030, How Today's Biggest Trends Will Collide and Reshape the Future of Everything. Professor Mauro Guillen, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Egberto, thank you so much for having me. It's truly a pleasure.
Okay, I hope you guys like that. I really enjoyed it. And by the way, Bruce, I could sit down and have a coffee with him as well, my brother. Imagine that interview was supposed to be a 10 to 15 minute interview. We really got into it, and we just said, you know what, to hell with it. We're going to do a full interview. I love the guy. He's a MBA professor at Wharton School, UPenn. We're our tyrannous, is it tyrannous a word? Or tyrannical president went. Anyhow, let me go ahead and say hi to my peeps. Let me get to the top. Welcome aboard, Michael Rudnin, AVQ, Brige, MCP, Bruce Pillard. Let's see, Norman Reynolds, Daniel Ledoux, Rose Williams, Brenda Craig. Let's see who else is here. Welcome, Brenda. Let's see who else is here. Para ver. Tank 28, welcome. Adam Good, welcome. Who else is here? See, I got some my good MAGA friends in here too. Trent Lithgow, welcome aboard. Patricia De Galani, mi hermana, how are you doing, my friend? Haven't seen you in a while. Great seeing you here. Pat Rankin, welcome aboard. Let's see who else is here. Kimberly Andrews, welcome. Kevin Massersmith, welcome aboard. Brenda Craig. Who else am I missing? If I miss you, just throw it to the bottom of just add it. Joseph Williams, welcome. Margarita Impagliasso, welcome aboard. Great to see you. I think you're in Italy, right? Anyhow. Para ver, who else am I missing? I think I got Joseph Williams already. I know I had some more that I'm missing down below, so I'm finding it right now because I want to acknowledge all of you and thank all of you who have given your time to listen to Politics Done Right, knowing May Wood, welcome aboard, knowing that you are going to be around sharing and making sure other people get all this great information. Anyhow, folks, we are at 3:56. We're almost done here. I want to ask you one more time to please consider subscribing to our program. We do need your subscriptions to maintain and stay alive. So please go to politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. And most importantly, in order to talk to people, and I put how to talk to your right-wing neighbor and all of that, but it's even how to talk to us among ourselves at times. Please go ahead and get the book. It's called, you can actually get, I didn't collect that right. You can get the book at Amazon. Here is the book. It's called It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. Put a lot into that book, so please go ahead and get it. I'm sure you will like it, so check it out. Check it out. Look, folks, we got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. Forgot. Go to politicsdoneright.com/store if you want to get, you can get the book there or you can get it on Amazon. Anyway, you know how I end the show. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel, and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much.